Well, hello, and welcome to Stop Let's Team Up. It's me, Ross. It is this week's episode, which is episode 37. And I thought this was kind of a last minute thing, so I've just finished reading it a little bit ago, and I did a little reading. But we're going to be covering Leading Comics number 1, the first appearance of the Seven Soldiers of Victory. I've been reading I've been reading Legion and jumping around, but I've been fortunate enough to guest on World on Fire a few times, cover some All-Star Squadron comics. I'm covering the Freedom Fighters with Billy. And I'm going to have the opportunity to also chat about some of the All-Star Squadron that came out, not All-Star Squadron, All-Star comics that came out in the 70s with the Super Squad, which are just fantastic. And because I covered freedom fighters and stuff like that, and I've discussed, I've talked a little bit about the Seven Soldiers of Victory, Jla Jsa team up, and Super Squad had Star-Spangled Kid, and then Infinity, and then I became a Starman fan with John Robinson's Starman, and then Stargirl, Jeff Johns' creation, loved it. And Stargirl's coming back out. There's a new book with the Earth 2 Justice Society with the original Huntress, original Golden Age Robin coming back, and Stargirl looking for sidekicks. And she had a great summer special last year, which really kind of hinted to what in the modern DC universe is the Seven Soldiers of Victory. So I thought I'd read some Seven Soldiers of Victory. And you know what? I have all 3 volumes of the archives. I have thumbed through them and oohed and ah over some of the great art. But I've never read them. I wanted them because I thought, as that kind of collector, anything connected to Star-Spangled Kid, Stargirl, Starman, I had to have. If I knew if there was a collection, is there a collection? Let me know someone of Star-Spangled Kid's comics outside of Seven Soldiers of Victory and Leading Comics. I'd love to hear it. But I just finished, for the very first time, Leading Comics number 1. It was cover dated December 1941. Executive editor Whitney Ellsworth. Cover artist Mort Meskin. And there's there are 5 stories for the Seven Soldiers, because Speedy is in the Green Arrow and Wing is in the Crimson Avenger. The lead-in to the stories, and this is from the DC database, Seven Soldiers of Victory, Blueprint for Crime. At the hilltop mansion of a master criminal known as the Hand, a doctor issues a fatal diagnosis. The Hand had only a month to live. Deciding to make the most of his limited time, the Hand puts together a group consisting of the cleverest crooks and gangsters in order to pull off the greatest crime wave of his career. Headlines soon pour in. The Red Dragon, Professor Merlin, Big Caesar, and the Needle are broken out of their respective prisons. Meanwhile, a raid of the Dummy's hideout turns sour after a tip from the Hand gives the Dummy plenty of time to get away with his thugs. Keep the cops distracted with a shootout. Soon, the Hand meets the 5 criminals at his home. He tells them of his plan to make them his 5 fingers, each performing a robbery that will put them in direct opposition with the best crime fighters, such as Green Arrow and the Crimson Avenger. The team of competent crooks felt that their own intellect, combined with the Hand's help, could overcome any obstacle they face. So it is at that the Hand places an ad in the papers challenging the Green Arrow, Crimson Avenger, Shining Knight, Star-Spangled Kid, and the Vigilante to participate in the greatest criminal chase in history, giving instructions to meet at the auditorium in Gotham City for more information. In the Gotham auditorium, the heroes gather together, and right on time, a screen flickers on, revealing the image of the Hand. The Hand tells them where each crime will take place, letting them decide for themselves which crook to go after. Green Arrow suspect there is something much more sinister behind the event and suggests that they meet back here a week later. But for now, they all agree to divide up and track down the 5 criminals. That's a synopsis just of the introduction. And I just read this, and it was great. So I'm going to kind of go through each part while I'm thumbing through. I'm not going to give you a synopsis. I'm just going to... you don't want to listen to me read badly. You do not want to know how many takes that took. But I am going to kind of go over each of the different sections. And the layout, the format of the stories is very much the same as All-Star Comics is with the Justice Society, where they split up. So here we're going to go through the different sections. That first section was written by Mort Weissinger, penciled by George Papp, inked by George Papp, and edited by Whitney Ellsworth. The first section is Green Arrow, which is the exact same creative team, George Papp. It's great, man. I love George Papp. Even this Golden Age stuff, which is a little more primitive. It's a great little story. He is up against... Wait a minute, who is his? Merlin. He's battling Merlin, who looks like the wizard from the Injustice gang, and he's just a crook. And you see the Star Rocket Racer, and it's kind of Batman. Their ejector seats, and it involves them trying to find this gold stash of this old prospector who has a phobia for the cold. But it's how many pages is this sucker? 1, 2, 3, 4. It is. Oh, shoot. Good. It's 9 pages long. It's a solid story, solid adventure, and the art's pretty good. I think if you've heard me talk, sometimes I think some of the art in All-Star Comics and the Golden Age stuff is really primitive, especially when it's the split up and do your own thing comic. I prefer the later ones where they go on an adventure somewhat together. This is more coherent than some of the All-Star ones I've read, but I really like that about it. So after that is the Star-Spangled Kid, and it's by Jerry Siegel. Yes, Jerry Siegel created Superman, created Star-Spangled Kid, and artist Al Sherman, who, as we're talking, I'm looking something up, see what he's known for. Born to 1911, but More Fun Comics #1. And it looks like he doesn't... Star-Spangled Kid. It's like his big thing. It's not... Let me see what else he did. It's mostly Star-Spangled Kid. But it's Star-Spangled Kid. He did some Harvey, some did better comics. I'm only kind of think I'm familiar with him is from old Star-Spangled Kid stories. And it's very cartoony. A little more primitive. But they have a style. The Needle's in it, and I'm going to post some pictures. The Needle came back, and they did those 5 Earth Prime comics over the summer, and the summer before they did the Stargirl summer special. But the Earth Prime Stargirl issue by James Robinson, I called him John earlier, oops, and Jerry Ordway is basically the Stargirl, the TV show, and the Pat of the TV show. Their family is out camping, and a reformed Needle shows up, and at the end, Magog offers him to become one of his henchmen, but he refuses. So it was neat for me to see the Needle, read the Needle in that, and assume it was a real character. I mean, I was guessing. I don't know if they had made it up for that thing. And then to go back and read this weird little story with this crazy little villain, and to see Sylvester and his secret identity. I've never read much, maybe 1 or 2 of his Golden Age adventures. He's a kid, and him and Pat met when they were both trying to solve a crime, and he goes down to Panama, and he has he's just a rich kid, and his mom and dad are really powerful, and he's a good kid. So I kind of like to see, because I'm more used to him being, the adult who had been trapped in the past for unaging for a long period of time from the Jla Jsa Crossover, and then his stuff in when he became a Justice Society member in the revival of All-Star Comics. So it's pretty cool. So next up is The Crimson Avenger and his sidekick Wing by Mort Weissinger, penciler, inker Jack Legte, and editor Whitney Ellsworth. So I took a little pause there and looked up Mr. Lady, because I've read some of his stuff in comics, and I knew he did Crimson Avenger, and he did some other stuff for DC. And Facts About the Bible, I'd seen that in newspapers. It was a strip. It's still published. When I was reading there, it's still published. Some of it's reprinted in newspapers all over the world still. He's a good artist. First I'm going to talk about his art. He's got did a great one. The logo by Jack Lady and his under signature underneath. Beautiful, beautiful logo. The art's stunning. I think it's, for its time, I've got that newspaper feel. This is like 1941. There's some very basic stuff about it, but I like his layout. I like how his panel progression is. It's rough compared, like it's still a little rough, but it's a good solid story. It's really nice, really sharp. I mean, this is a reprint. I mean, I don't know, they're not doing it from a negative, so they're having to create a negative and remaster it, but it's really well done. It looks like more pen work than brush, if I remember. I could tell the difference. My brother kind of taught me. This looks more like, that doesn't like brush. It looks like different styles of hard pens to ink it. It's beautiful. I have to say that Wing is racist, or his portrayal is. I'd never realized he had a question mark on his chest in the Golden Age, and they started to draw that Todd Nook in the cover for that Stargirl, where Stargirl and Red Arrow go looking for the old 40s sidekicks, which they made up. I'm going to have all these pictures popping up tonight when I post this. But they go in a fight on Broadway against, who is their crowd? Big Caesar. Big Caesar's there. He's a gangster, and they try to do all these things. But I like the art. I think it's really, really nice. I'd like to read more of the Crimson Avenger. I'd like to read him pre-costume or pre-superhero tights costume to see what it was like. But, this character, he predates Superman. So he's the first costume superhero in the DC universe, if you go by, on Earth 2. So I really freaking loved it. I really just absolutely loved it. I just wish someday someone does like a retelling of this and can kind of un-racist up Wing. Hopefully in the Stargirl book, maybe they bring him back and they just, kind of salvage. Because I kind of like the superhero in the 40s with the teen sidekick. I know it's ridiculous, but it's just kind of cool. And some of them are really good characters, well written, right? And more so, I liked how they are reimagined later, like Star-Spangled Kid and Stripe. And Stargirl, when she's the Star-Spangled Kid, and Pat is Stripe in the robot suit. Because I think sometimes Johns and some other people have really taken these Golden Age characters and given them a life in the modern day. So next up is Shining Knight. Credits on that: Mort Weissinger, Craig Flessel, pencil and inks. And this is really nice too. I think this is probably some of the best art in it. His villain is the Red Dragon, and it's a guy with a top hat and a red mask over top, and it takes place out west, and they meet Indians who are drawn like they're Indians in a bad Western movie, and it's really, really kind of bad, but the art's beautiful. The villain costume is great. It's a very 40s villain. I kind of dig it. I love that 40s aesthetic. But I think the panel layout and I think the art is really good. And he did a lot of stuff. I just Googled him, and he did some early Sandman. He did some unaccredited Superboy and other stuff in the 40s. But it's really good. It's not the Frazetta stuff I've seen of Shining Knight, but, this is nice. I think there's a Shining Knight collection. I might have to hunt that down. All right. So the final chapter is the Vigilante, and you should just go listen to Prairie Justice. Great podcast, and I will put a link to it because he covers all things the Vigilante. And the Vigilante is by Mort Weissinger, Mort Meskin, Whitney Ellsworth. I like Mort Meskin. Sometimes he has a very vibrant, energetic style, and he plays with the panels and stuff like this. I think he's a little more inventive. This is one of the few comics I've ever read where Vigilante's sidekick is old Billy Gunn instead of his ethnic, awful, racist sidekick he had. I forget what he was called, but I think it was worse than Wing. But the art in this is just stunning. He battles a tiger. The Vigilante fights a tiger. It's incredibly cool. But he's battling the dummy, his arch enemy. But I would have to say, I'm gonna say this just straight up: is I think Mort Meskin wins her best artist in it. It reminds me very much of Alec Toth, and in kind of the structure and the pennant, the inking, it's pretty good. And the conclusions by Blueprint for Crime, Collusion, Mort, Meisinger, George Papp, Morning Well. But he draws the characters the way their artist draws them, which I think is very cool. He draws Star-Spangled Kid and Stripsey more like Hal Sherman than his own Green Arrow, and same with he mimics the artist who did the main, his Vigilante looks a little more Miskin-y. It's really a nice tie-up. But that was a huge comic. I mean, basically it started on page, with the covers, on 9 and ended on 65. So it was 57 pages. That's 3 comics these days. But I think y'all should need to check it out. I'm going to read the Black Star, which is leading comic number 2, and I will probably do, I may do a Liberty Legion like once a month or so, maybe on Wednesdays. We'll revisit these volumes because it was a lot of fun. I didn't really cover the individual chapters. They're pretty basic. You're not missing a lot. It's fun, but I recommend you go find it and read it. These books, I got all 3 volumes at one time for a reasonable price. I don't know what they're going for now, but I'm going to pause here and I'm going to see if it's on the app. Okay, I'm back, and no, it is not on the app. There are places to read it. There's got to be plenty. If you can find it, read it. It is well worth. If you're a Golden Age fan like me, read it. I'm going to enjoy this. I've got 3 whole volumes, but like I said, I got them relatively cheap. I don't think they're too insane for some of these. This was printed, volume 1's printed 2005, so it's a 17-year-old book, and I've just cracked. I mean, I've gone through it a bunch of times, just, bored, not focused on reading it. And when I got them, I went through each book very slowly and looked at them. It's gorgeous. But it's like any 40s comic or comic of the past or any piece of art from another era. It's got its flaws socially sometimes. They interpret the world they're taught the way they were taught it, and sometimes it's just not fair. And it's kind of in bad taste and mean-spirited. Because that's ultimately what it is. So I'm not condemning it and saying don't ever read it, because that's not what I'm saying, and I think that's silly. You have to look at art and be able to judge it on its mistakes as well as the things it gets right. And his comics are full of fun. They're meant to be fun, and that's means joy and some relaxation and escapism. But I look at art in my particular way, which is probably pretentious as hell. That I kind of always look at art and I see it as how it was written, why it was written, when it was written, and how it affected me when I first read it, and every time I read it again. As someone who did theater, I saw and did it live. It's live stuff, and I mean, it was small regional theater, but I get that thing is, and watching actors, it's every night is different. Every time you perform the piece of art or you observe a piece of art, it changes. It's not static, and it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So I really enjoyed this comic because I kind of look at it and I see the history of a genre, superhero comics, team comics that I love, and I see how it's changed. And how it affects comics I'm looking forward to in the future, which are going to have some of these characters and going to be tied to this in some way. And Jeff Johns, his Justice Society holds a special part in my heart, alongside of Jerry Conway and Paul Levitt's Justice Society and All-Star Comics, Ward Thomas's All-Star Squadron, Grant Morrison's Seven Soldiers of Victory, all people who liked this source material and this era's source material, and said it was still valid and the characters were still valid in this day. I mean, and Justice Society as they were viewed in the 60s and 70s and 80s in the annual crossovers changed, reflective of who was writing it when it was written. And it's kind of, to me, I find that incredibly fascinating. So that's kind of why I want to touch base with these comics of the 40s, and I don't know that much about 50s, so maybe I'll delve into some 50s stuff. Maybe I'll find some All-Winter Squad. I don't have any of those. It's not one. Marvel's Golden Age I'm not as familiar with or as fond of, but it's probably just not enough exposure. So check this out. Look them up. Also on the app is the Jla Jsa Crossover issues 100 through 101. I talked about it with Ron on our thing about Len Wein a couple weeks ago. It's a fantastic 3-part. It's probably the best, in some ways, the best JSA JLA crossover, I think, especially in the 70s. It's fantastic. So check that out. And if you're not getting the app, I recommend it. DC, if anybody who works for you hears it, you could give me a free subscription or send me some stuff. I will sing the praise. I think I have some qualms about both Marvel and DC's app is that they don't have enough Golden Age stuff, and I think there may be less interest in it with the younger people and the people who have the app. I mean, I know I have the app because I've had to purge my comics, and I don't have room, and so the app makes it easy. I'm reading Starman 1 a night. When I'm done here, I'm going to read number 8. I'm going to do a whole episode when I get to where the TV show that I've seen in the comic are, and I'm going to do an episode on Sandman. But back to the apps. I think sometimes a lot of this Golden Age may not appear because of some of the problematic stuff. The 2 incidents I discussed in this one, the way Indians are portrayed and the way Wing is portrayed, is they just don't want to put it up there. I mean, it's if you want to go in and look at 40 stuff, I can understand why they're not putting stuff that's somewhat offensive and out of date on the app. But I think that's a little bit of it. I think most of it's just the interest is to a niche group of people, and they're great comics. They're worth being read. All right, they're worth being read, and I'm glad I read them and glad I'm talking about them. And I'd like to hear what you think about them, because I'm going to continue, because I've not read. I'm going to read all the. What I'm going to try to do is by maybe Christmas, or a little after, I get through one of these volumes, or by the end of next year, I've read every 7 Soldiers of Victory. Because I started reading I've got the Morrison Omni, and I've read the first chunk of it, but it was a lot, so I took a break and read some a little more mindless, a little more generic, a little more fun. So, but hey, day after tomorrow, Tuesday, if I'm not too crazed at work, a lot going on. I'm trying to stay on track. So the next is the introduction of Dream Girl, is the next Legion, and we'll be on parts 5 and 6, chapters 5 and 6 of the Avengers Defenders War on Thursday, and the next issue of Defenders I'm covering. And next weekend, on Saturday, you will hear me and Jim Fetters, we recorded this past Friday, discuss the different origins of the Legion of Superheroes. A great conversation. I love having Jim on, and I'm going to try to find ways to maybe have him on more. It'd be fun. He's great to talk to, and he's got a real positive outlook on comics, which is something the world needs. So, folks, that's it. All right, you have a happy Monday, which is tomorrow. I'm putting this up a day late because I had some Gallifrey recording to do and editing, and I took a day to just watch a lot of Doctor Who, as I got the steel box for The Abominable Snowman, where they've done animated A Missing Story using the soundtrack. If you're not a Doctor Who fan, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about, but I always buy the UK version in the steelbook of these. This is the last one. They're gorgeous. They do an amazing job. And for someone 2 years ago or 3 years ago thought he would never see some second Doctor stories that weren't just the audio, because that's all they had, I've now watched a bunch. So for me, it was a great time. Check out my Doctor Who podcast, Gallifrey's Most Wanted. I'm covering a lot of Doctor Who comic books. If you're interested in that, I just posted today, me and Mark McManus from Trap One Doctor Who podcast. We talked about some of the Panini comics that came out during the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, specifically the Hunters of the Burning Stone, which had the return of the 2 original companions, and it's a great comic book. And they do Panini does a great comic book. So, but folks, that's it. Enough of me gabbing. Enough of me shilling out my other podcast. But you know what? As I say, be smart, be safe, be kind, and read some comics.